Well, we want to welcome Marlous and Nieuwveen into the Valpo Hall of Fame class of 2020-2021. Marlous, first off, congratulations. I know you'd gotten a call previous years about entering the Valpo Hall of Fame, but you've been overseas for a long time, and this was an opportunity in a virtual 2021 Hall of Fame class to join a lot of your former team members who have made it kind of in great years with Valpo women's basketball. And let's start with, before we talk about your years at Valpo, how you ended up coming to Valpo. At that point, I think the men had started bringing over European players. The women had not. How'd you end up at Valpo?
Well, one of the coaches from the junior national team, he helped me, and I think he just sent some way back then videotapes to the States, and just as all the other players, I was recruited by several universities, and then I ended up visiting Valpo and one other school, and then the visit was great, the girls were great, and then I just decided on Valpo, so that's how I landed in Valpo.
You had played the previous year, obviously, in your home country, in the Netherlands, correct? And then were there other girls that you knew of, either in the Netherlands or other parts of Europe, who had already started to come to the United States to play basketball?
Yes, there were a few, and I myself went to a basketball camp in Tennessee when I think I was maybe 14 or 15 years old, and that's kind of when I decided, I mean, before that, I didn't even know it was an option, but then I was like, oh, that seems like something cool that I would want to do. So.
All right, now you arrive at Valpo, and there were some really good teams that you played on. In fact, I think the year before you got there was probably one of the best Valpo teams. The transition from playing in the Netherlands to playing in the United States, maybe start with that.
It was rough. It was rough, and I think my teammates will remember, and Coach Freeman will remember, and all the other coaches, how rough it was for me. It was tough. In the Netherlands, we kind of just play for fun, and I think now it's a little bit more professional. But when I was young, I honestly just played for fun, and I had to learn a different work ethic when I was in the States, which actually brought me a lot afterwards. But it was tough running all the sprints, and I remember hyperventilating, and I mean it was difficult. It wasn't easy.
You came into a program that really, Keith Freeman, you'd mentioned Coach Freeman, who had such great success here, especially during the late 90s, throughout the early to mid 2000s with post players. And when you came in, I think Sarah Strickland had already established herself as an all-conference player. She is a Valpo Hall of Famer as well. You got a chance to, I assume, go against her in practice a lot, and maybe that helped elevate your play.
Yeah, her and Carrie Wickham at the time. I think one of them was a starter, maybe even both of them. I'm not sure. They were pretty good. Also, my first year, Aaron Goldman and Beth were still there. So I got to learn from everyone. They were all much more experienced than I was. So yeah, and I think Carrie, because she got injured, she actually ended up staying an extra year.
And Amber Schober was in your class as well, who was another. So there were a lot of really good, big post players that you went against and played with throughout the course of your career. Now, by the time I think you got to your junior year, you had an outstanding junior year, and by then a lot of them had graduated. So that gave you an opportunity to get more playing time. And what was that like? Because now you went from coming off the bench to being somebody who was playing a lot of minutes, and you excelled at that point.
Yeah, and our junior year was another rough year where we had a lot of losses, and I think we were still a pretty good team, or we had pretty good players. We just couldn't really get it together on the court. But then the transition from our junior year to our senior year, I think it was the biggest turnaround ever. with wins and losses. So and the playing time. Yeah, well, I'd always been used to playing, so not playing as much in my first 2 years was a little bit more difficult for me than actually playing and being having a bigger role. I think that always suited me a little bit better. But it was nice to kind of be able to grow as a player without feeling all the weight of having to be a starter, because it asks a lot more responsibility, I think.
You mentioned your senior year, and that was one of the best seasons in Valpo women's history. You guys won games in the women's WNIT. I went back. I think you had like 4 girls now who are Hall of Fame players. You had a great team. I think you brought in Katie Boone that year, who became a Valpo Hall of Famer as a freshman point guard. Jeanette Gray was on that team. We had mentioned Amber Schober, and that team really excelled. And I remember you played a home game in the women's NIT. You beat Michigan, and you got a home game in the women's WNIT. That might have been the biggest crowd ever here at the Arc. What was that season like? You went in after, as you said, a disappointing season. Now your senior season, it's your last year, and you guys all put it together. What was the big change?
You do know it's a long time ago, right? Because you're asking me all these questions. It's more than 20 years ago. I'm not really sure, but I think we just found a way to make it click. And yeah, what was the difference? Honestly, I'm not sure, but I think if you lose a lot, it affects your confidence. And I think when we started winning, we started to really, really believe in ourselves. And then I think we were pretty decent or good basketball players. Right. And then, when you feel confident and you believe in yourself and in your team, good things happen. So, yeah.
Any overall thoughts about your overall experience as a Valpo University, not only women's basketball player, but as a student?
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because, as a foreign student athlete, it's not just coming to play basketball, but you also have to get used to a different culture, and people from a different culture have to get used to you. So that, I think it was hard sometimes, being away from family and friends, because you're, trying to pursue a dream, or, playing basketball was always what I loved doing the most. And for that, I found a great place in Valpo. And yeah, for academics, it's such a long time ago. I really, I really rarely think back of, I had this class or that class. And, I'm glad I got my degree. That's great. But, after that, I went pro for almost 10 years. So I never really used my degree for anything. But yeah, for the base of, I think the personal growth from being, a young 18-year-old and still being young at 22. But now that I'm older and I can reflect, I think like, okay, it was a tough period, but it's also a period that shaped me and gave me some tools that I took with me for the rest of my life. So
obviously you grew a lot as a basketball player, and Valpo fans remember that. And you just talked about the first 2 years. You were coming off the bench and just kind of learning, and it was a learning experience. But by the end, your last 2 years, you put up great numbers, and the team really excelled there in your senior season a lot because of your play, and that sort of shaped you for, as you said, the next 10 years of playing. And I think a lot of people, Valpo fans, know that you did spend a little bit of time in the WNBA, but that wasn't right out of school, right? You did go back overseas and play in Europe. I think you played in Italy and Spain, and maybe talk about those years and then what led up to you getting a call from the LA Sparks.
Yep. Well, and in my at the end of my senior year, there was a draft camp, and I went there. And I think you're there with like maybe 80 or 100 of the top rated players in the country. And then I was approached by different agents. So me and Keith looked them over, and we chose one that we felt was right for me. And then there was an option for me to join or at least go to a training camp. But then she said, well, if you weren't selected in the draft, the chance that you're going to make a team, it's not so big. And she said, I have another opportunity in South Korea.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, well, I just want to play, so I'll go to South Korea. And that was, I think it was 4 or 5 months. And I left, I think maybe 2 days after graduation, I flew to South Korea. So that was the start of my professional career, which was, I mean, it was special. Like we practiced there for 10 to 12 hours a day, and it was just another different culture.
Wow.
From which I learned a lot. And then I came back to Valpo actually maybe for a week before I went home, and then my European career started in Hungary, and I played in Italy, France. Then I was in Spain, in the Canary Islands. I don't know if you guys know, but it's like I don't want to say tropical islands, but I got to go to practice in my shorts like all the way through December, so that was nice. And I had a pretty good season, and I still had that same agent, and she said, well, the Sparks invited you for their training camp. So
Okay.
I was like, okay, I'll go. And I made the team. So that was, I mean, it was the most amazing part of my basketball career, obviously, just to make it to the top level. And yeah.
And then you ended up and then as your career went on, you ended up going back to Europe. So you came back and forth quite a few times overall throughout your basketball life.
Yeah. And well, I'm from the Netherlands, so Europe for me is it's I don't want to say it's home, but it's a lot closer to home.
Yeah.
And the season here is a lot longer than in the States, because we play from September through to May. Most of the seasons go from September through May. So yeah, that's most of my career. I did that, and that's what I did when I was in Spain. I was in Spain from September through May, and then, or maybe end of April, I went to LA to try out for the team, and then I think maybe in August I went home again.
There were quite a few, and maybe still are now, women who would play in Europe throughout the winter months and then play in the WNBA in the summer, right? So that was kind of common.
Yeah, there's still some players that do it. It's mostly the younger players because it's the strain on your body to play year round is pretty. Yeah, when you get older, it's tough. And what you also see is that well, the Europeans usually play the European season, then they go a little bit later to the WNBA season, and the WNBA players from America, they will finish their WNBA season, take like 1 or 2 months, and then start maybe halfway through the competition in Europe.
All right, let's talk about where you are now as we speak to you from across the sea, and what you're doing. Are you still coaching?
I am coaching. I played actually, I think maybe 5 years ago, I quit playing. And I played here in our league, and we finished with the championship. So then I was like, okay, I was 36 at the time, and I think I was old enough. So I quit. Then I took a year off, and now I'm into coaching a few years, and I coach actually the team that I played for last. It's in a city close to Amsterdam. It's in our top level. And it's a bunch of girls, and we have a mixed team of really young girls, 18, 19 years old, and our oldest players is 39. So it's a nice mix, and a little bit different than how, because we play for clubs and not for universities or high schools so yeah. It
has been, I guess, quite, you look at your experience, it's different than most. You've been through so much, and you played for so long after you finished playing at Valpo. And now, like, basketball's become sort of your entire life. And it's interesting. Do you ever, I mean, someday you're coaching, but someday you envision that the entire basketball life will end, I guess? Or do you expect to coach maybe 20 years? What do you expect?
Well, basketball is not my entire life anymore, because it's a hobby. I have a normal job.
Okay.
Because yeah, like I said, we play sports mostly for fun. And our league isn't a professional league. In other countries in Europe, we have a professional league. So we practice 3 nights a week, and then we have a game on the weekend. So I have a regular day job, and yeah, coaching is just a hobby that takes up a lot of my time.
Well, Marlous, it has been great catching up. Congratulations on your induction into the Valpo Hall of Fame class of 2021. And we wish you the best of luck going forward.
Thank you.